American plans for a military strike on Syria are on hold as a diplomatic solution put forward by the Russians is considered. President Obama said he wanted Congress to postpone a vote authorising military action pending the outcome of Moscow's plan to ensure the Syrian regime gave up its chemical weapons. In a television address designed to bolster public support for a military response, Mr. Obama said the US had to enforce the global ban on chemical weapons, and although any strike would be limited and targeted, it would be effective.
The United States military doesn't do pinpricks. Even a limited strike will send a message to Assad that no other nation can deliver. I don't think we should remove another dictator with force. We learned from Iraq that doing so makes us responsible for all that comes next. But a targeted strike can make Assad, or any other dictator, think twice before using chemical weapons.
Now let's hear from the journalist Nabila Ramdani, who's an expert in Arabic affairs in Paris. Nabila, Mr. Obama, speaking last night, was saying that while the US was not the world's policeman, the images of people being gassed were sickening and demanded a response. Do you feel that the US is still locked into possible military action if this initiative doesn't work out?
Well, I think what President Assad has managed to achieve is an absolute masterstroke in terms of PR. Remember, a few weeks ago, world leaders and indeed people around the world were talking about how this tyrant was killing his own people. And he has managed now to switch the attention to the issue of the control of chemical weapons. And this is, of course, a very important issue in the world today, but a side issue for a tyrant like him. Assad has been murdering men, women and children indiscriminately for the sake of keeping his minority in place for the past 2.5 years. More than 120,000 people have been killed so far. 4.5 million people have been displaced internally. A third of homes in Syria have been destroyed. There are 2 million refugees who have left the country, half of them being children. But Assad has managed to kill an awful lot of people with chemical weapons too, and he wants now an undertaking from America that they will not bear arms against him in exchange of this spurious deal. It is an outrageous display of false logic, and what he's managed to achieve is to remove the biggest threat against him, effectively, America. He has managed to portray America as an aggressor, and he made America look like the major obstacle to peace and completely turned the situation around. And the USA, which is the only world superpower, has been played and indeed muted, and it was in effect the only nation that could sort out Syria, and it has been completely muted, and the whole thing is a ruse, really.
On the other hand, what the Americans are saying, and they're saying that this demands a response. If this is not carried out, indicates that if this does turn out to be simply a delaying tactic, that they will act. Do you believe that's not the case?
Well, I think, what Assad is trying to achieve is to become a lovable rogue who redeemed himself. And this was orchestrated by Syria's greatest allies, the Russians. And we've seen that happening in the past. It is worth remembering that Gaddafi had also pledged to give up his weapons of mass destruction. But following the conflict, recently we found out that he still had the masses of them. And what this deal shows is that Assad has had a very good PR week. He started off last week with a timely interview with a big American news channel, CBS, at a moment when a deeply divided U.S. Congress was debating over military intervention. And he's now pledged to hand over his chemical weapons and sign the conventions on chemical weapons. And he's managed to portray himself as a good, old, decent guy complying with the wastes. And that's exactly how we treated with people like Gaddafi in the late 80s and the early 90s.
Nabila Ramdani, thanks very much indeed. That's the journalist Nabila Ramdani, who's an expert on Arabic affairs.